Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back everybody for another YouTube video. Today we have a very special guest coming on the show. We've got Colton Conley, the founder of Prime Protocol, coming on today to talk to us about his project. So welcome on board, Colton.
Thank you for having me. Super happy to be here and chat about Prime and what we're launching.
Yeah, it's Prime Protocol, something that I've done quite a bit of looking into. I saw your chat at Polkadot Decoded in 2022, which I thought was brilliant. And I've really been fascinated with Prime and getting you on the show ever since then. So massive thank you for coming on. Could we start, and really where I like to start with all my guests is a little bit of an introduction into yourself. So
Sure.
if you could give an introduction, that would be great.
Yeah, so my background, I come from a tech family. My dad, my uncle are both tech entrepreneurs and did VC in the past. And so I'd been coding since I was really young, grew up in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. And I got into crypto originally in high school, just as retail investor and trader. I started building these arbitrage bots between all of the centralized exchanges that existed back then. And I did that end of high school into college, and then sort of fell down the traditional finance rabbit hole for just a little bit. I worked at JP Morgan and then Citadel doing rates trading and quant research type stuff. And then did that after grad very briefly as well. Went back to the same team at Citadel. So I've had my my hand in traditional finance and in crypto for a while now. And I studied data science and statistics and economics in college. So a lot of the combination between math and computer science and econ, which is pretty much what crypto is. So I've always had a passion for the space, and I was a real DeFi power user for quite a bit. It's like all I was spending my free time doing, even once I was working full time. Every opportunity I had to work from home and just have work on the screen, but be doing DeFi instead. And I would take it. And I really thought there was a need for something to bring on-chain DeFi activity like closer to parity with traditional finance. Because if you go to a prime broker in traditional finance land, they take a look at your entire portfolio, all your assets, and then they give you margin against all of that. And there's a reason they don't just look at your Amazon stock when they're deciding how much leverage am I going to give you. They look at all your stocks and your derivatives and everything. And that's because there's benefits to the diversification of your portfolio. It's more capital efficient and it's way more user friendly. You don't want to have to manage a ton of different lines of credit. But in crypto, that's not how it worked before Prime. Every chain is its own siloed island. Every protocol is its own siloed island. They're not communicating with each other. And yeah, we have bridges, but nobody has really taken what's available to us with these cross-chain messaging protocols and built like an actual complex financial primitive that's able to manage state across time. And that's something that's necessary to do something like borrowing. And so that's where Prime comes in. So I decided to start Prime to solve that problem of interoperable financial primitives and allow people to really use their whole on-chain portfolio as one. And obviously was at Polkadot Decoded because we're building in the Polkadot ecosystem as one of the ecosystems that we're launching on. And I obviously agree with the multi-chain thesis that Polkadot is trying to facilitate.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Your background certainly, I'm sure, is helping you out in where you are today, having a little bit of both traditional finance and Web 2. And I've often heard and seen quite a few founders that come from Web 2, and it's certainly an advantage that I think people play on. And you mentioned about being very sort of forthcoming with DeFi. You love DeFi. I'm the same. And I have to admit, one of the things that really interested me with Prime Protocol was because for me, DeFi's got pretty stagnant.
Yeah.
it's kind of been done, and there was this big boom with Uniswap and so on and so forth.
Right.
And then you just had kind of projects doing the same thing, sometimes not even bothering to change the code, right?
No, they usually would not change the code, because then you had less security risk because you're using code that's already been audited and tested out.
Yeah,
Um,
and this is where and why I was so interested in talking to you, because Prime is doing things differently, and that brings us kind of perfectly on to Prime Protocol. You know, what is Prime Protocol? What is this project that you are building?
Yeah, so Prime Protocol basically allows you to deposit your assets on any blockchain and then borrow from any other blockchain, regardless of where you locked that collateral. And it operates like one global margin account, basically. So we're starting out with spot margin, and that means like if I deposit my USDC on ETH and my staked AVAX on Avalanche and some Matic tokens on Polygon, then I'm able to borrow Glimmer on Moonbeam and USDC on Arbitrum. And it all works together as one account. So I didn't have to send any tokens over a bridge to accomplish that. When I want to withdraw the tokens, I can withdraw them to those original chains where I deposited them. And those borrows that I'm taking out aren't backed by just the assets on one chain. I didn't have to partition my portfolio into two pieces, one to send to Arbitrum and one to send to Moonbeam. It really all works as one unified system. And so what we're bringing is the ability to basically engage in borrowing and spot leverage regardless of chain. So agnostic to where you hold your assets or where you want to be borrowing, which hasn't been done before. Because previously, if you want to do something like this on chain, you got to bridge all your assets to a chain, find a protocol there that's going to offer you the ability to collateralize that asset and the asset that you want to borrow. And Prime basically takes care of all of that for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. It sounds like quite a tall task that you're trying to, a tall order that you're trying to fill there. How are you actually trying to facilitate this? So we've seen borrowing and lending with the likes of Aave, Compound, most notably on Ethereum. Of course, we're seeing today that Ethereum is having, again, a bit of an issue with high gas fees, which has always been the case. Not to mention Bitcoin and what's going on there today, but that's maybe for
all the BRC20s.
Crazy what's taking place today. I mean, I don't think the Bitcoin network has ever been congested as it has at this point. I might be wrong on that, but I think it's pretty alarming.
Well, I mean, you call it congestion. It's really just like prices are higher. So people who aren't willing to pay the higher prices aren't going to have their transactions mined in as quickly. But like the Bitcoin network isn't going to break. I'm not worried about that. But it definitely makes it less usable for the average user who doesn't want to pay an obscene fee just to transfer value from one person to another because everybody else is playing with meme coins. So I think there is a scalability issue just using ETH L1 or just using Bitcoin network, which is part of the reason why I'm super bullish on this multi-chain narrative, whether that comes in the form of new parachains, new Cosmos app chains, new L2s. We've got to scale away from just ETH mainnet or even alt L1s. We need to make this accessible to everybody and not just people who are willing to shell out $1,000 on a gas fee.
Which is insane. It shouldn't really be that way, I don't think. But of course, with Prime, you do have the options to do that elsewhere. So if we think about Aave and kind of Compound, they're of course on Ethereum. But would you compare yourself, and it's probably not a fair comparison to make, would you compare yourself with the likes of Aave and Compound, but cross-chain, or do you think that's an unfair comparison? It's very general, but
no,
I think
that's a totally fair
understand.
comparison. I think, we're offering similar pool-based liquidity for like the money market assets. We've obviously got that stablecoin capability that I had talked about at Polkadot Decoded. That's still in the protocol and ready to go. But yeah, it's very similar to like a cross-chain Aave.
Yeah, I mean that just sounds amazing. I was very early in Compound and Aave, and I've got to admit they've kind of stagnated a bit. And I think one of the issues that they had was with being built on Ethereum. You know, it doesn't fit everybody, like you say, and I think that's where the optionality of Prime is really going to come into its own. And talking about how you plan on being in this multi sort of chain vision that we have, how is Prime actually looking to facilitate that? Because you mentioned bridges. We've seen a lot of issues with bridges.
Yep.
There's some interesting ways, you know, Cosmos has their IBC, and of course, Polkadot inherently has XCM.
Yep.
How are you guys trying to solve and become cross-chain? How are you facilitating that?
Yep. So within Polkadot, we can use XCM. Outside of Polkadot, right now, everything's being routed over Axelar, which is it works very similar to IBC actually, but across basically every blockchain, both within Cosmos and EVMs outside of Cosmos as well. And the thing that we do that's different than just a bridge is if you look at where those hacks actually happened with a lot of these bridges, it's not necessarily that the consensus mechanism got something wrong and somebody compromised, you know, enough validators in the validator set to be pushing faulty messages. It was an issue with the token bridge. And usually somebody was able to basically replay a transaction or a signature over and over again to drain a token bridge when they shouldn't have been able to do that. And so I think one of the biggest things when it comes to like bridge security is it's actually like how you implement the contracts on your end, whether that's token bridge or something like what we're doing. And whether you've thought through, you know, that design and making sure that you're very careful with how you interact with the message passing. And so we've taken a lot of care to that, and we've built a lot of things ourselves that haven't been done before, that make sure that it's a secure solution. So, for example, we have this routing contract, and what it does, it protects against replay attacks by basically caching all the messages that have been processed before by their unique hashes, and also messages that have been attempted to be sent. So that way, let's say a user has data going from chain A to chain B. They tried to send it, but for whatever reason, you know, Axelar went down. We have the capability to plug in, you know, another message passer as a backup, and then resend that message over that message passer. And if it hasn't been processed on the other end, then the other chain will receive that message, process it, you get credit for your deposit, your withdrawal goes through, everything's fine. So we're not dependent on you know, any single solution in the middle. And the other thing that does is, let's say, you know, somebody was trying to act maliciously and they're trying to replay that message over and over again, which is something that we've seen happen to other protocols where you know, you have a withdrawal transaction from a bridge basically being replayed and everybody drains the bridge. And so our contract, you know, in addition to whatever message passer we're using, does like an extra step of verification to make sure that that's not possible. So we've taken a lot of care to do that. And we aren't sending value between different chains the current way Prime works, because we have liquidity on each chain. We're just sending messages and information. So you know, it's much harder to as an exploiter hack that, because, you know, we're not reliant on somebody else's token bridge in order to secure value. We're really taking like, okay, you know, Colton has deposited 50 ETH on Ethereum. We're going to leave that ETH locked in a contract on Ethereum, and we're going to extend a borrow on a different chain, but we're not going to be like bridging that Ethereum somewhere else and back and forth. We're just going to leave it on L1. And yeah, so it's definitely a new approach using just the message passing layer rather than the token bridges. But there also really haven't been many complicated applications like this that have been built that can leverage that effectively.
Yeah, I think people try and reinvent the wheel with sending value across chain, because like if you look at the traditional sort of financial system, it's broadly messaging, right? It's a messaging system.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like people have kind of really tried to reinvent the wheel where you actually have to physically send Ethereum from the Ethereum mainnet to another chain physically. Whereas do you really need to do that if you have an accurate accounting model of where everything is and you can just use messaging?
And the thing is why are you sending the value in the first place? Like there are a lot of assets where you can't send it cross chain. Maybe it's like a staked asset or something that is interest bearing. Like we'll be able to take all sorts of different kinds of collateral that there's no bridge for in the first place. And if you did bridge it, there'd be no liquidity. It would be useless on another chain. And a lot of times I think the reason why people are bridging ETH from chain A to chain B is because they want to use it as collateral somewhere else. But because there's no cross-chain borrow lend platform, they haven't been able to do that by just locking it up on ETH mainnet and then leaving it there. And so I think Prime is going to obfuscate the need for a lot of these bridges because it allows you to leave your assets where the liquidity exists. And then like if you're bridging ETH to some other chain where ETH is not the network token, you're doing it because you want to put it into either a farm or use it as collateral. And the reason why somebody would put it into a farm is because they might want to buy it and then use it as collateral. So I think Prime really makes the whole process a lot more efficient, and you won't need a gazillion bridges if you want to cross margin your portfolio as a result.
Yeah, it's why I was so eager to talk to you, because it sounds like music to my ears, a one-stop kind of DeFi shop for borrowing, lending, and other things, and I'm very much on board with this kind of cross-chain ideology. I think that has to be the case, right? I don't see any other outcome for it. And some of my listeners perhaps aren't as DeFi savvy as others. Could we maybe try and talk through, if I want to use Prime Protocol, and let's say borrow on another chain, and we can use whatever examples you see fit, what does that process look like from start to sort of finish?
Well, it's super
generally
simple. Let's say you're starting out, you have some ETH on Arbitrum, and you want to borrow Glimmer on Moonbeam. It's 2 clicks. The first one is deposit your ETH on Arbitrum. So you select that asset and hit the deposit button. Next one, from any chain you want, you can request a borrow of Glimmer to be distributed to you on Moonbeam. And then you can submit that borrow request from Arbitrum. You can do it on Moonbeam. You could do it from ETH. You could do it from Avalanche, wherever you want. And then the coins pop out and they're ready to go on Moonbeam. So maybe there was a yield farm opportunity, because right now there's a new grants program that just launched on Moonbeam. So the yields are really high there, and you want to go LP into that, and you need Glimmer in order to do so. You just got your Glimmer right there, backed by your ETH that's on Arbitrum. And that's pretty much it. And there's no chain that the cool thing about this is you can be using this from any chain. There's no chain that you have to be a user of in order to use Prime. You can use it from anywhere. And the cool thing about the way that we've built it is you can make that Glimmer borrow request from anywhere. So you don't even have to have been a Moonbeam user before in order to get network tokens and start using Moonbeam. You don't have to because it's really hard. If you're on Arbitrum, and you want to go to Moonbeam, as an example, how are you going to find the Glimmer in order to actually pay gas fees on Moonbeam? It's kind of a research project. It's a little bit easier going from Moonbeam to Arbitrum because you can find ETH on Moonbeam and try and send it to Arbitrum and unwrap it. But the bridges don't work to every network. Or you're trying to go from Moonbeam to Avalanche. There's not a liquid market for AVAX tokens on Moonbeam. So how are you going to get those gas tokens? With Prime, it's really easy. It's just 1 click. You just on Moonbeam say, hey, I want some AVAX tokens, dump them out on Avalanche. And that's all there is to it.
Wow.
So it's a pretty seamless experience.
Yeah, no, do you know what? It sounds amazing. It really does. And actually, and even myself, I love most blockchains that are out there, barring a few. But even I have ones that I'm a little bit more precious and enjoy using more than others. Tribalism is a real thing in the blockchain space. Prime Protocol kind of eliminates that. And not only does it kind of eliminate it because you don't have to go and use another chain, you can use the chain that you're comfortable with and still gain access to these other markets. Actually, the implementation of Prime on all these blockchains really drives up the demand for all of them and creates these kind of channels that, you know, don't exist in this kind of a manner. What kind of things, you know, broadly can you do with Prime? So just borrowing, lending, is there any other, not that that
there's
isn't
other stuff
a
in the
massive,
works. There's definitely other stuff that will be released in the future. So our hope is to, you know, be the one-stop shop for everything. That's really what we're aiming to do. I think the first iteration of this is, you know, the borrowing and liquidity, because that's something that there's definitely a need for. There's product market fit for it. That's been demonstrated. And it allows us to build a base across different chains and prove that our liquidations are working. So I think that, like, on day one, that's what you're going to be able to do, is earn yield on assets and borrow assets. In the future, there's a lot more stuff like, you know, our stablecoin and CDP that I've talked about in the past. Once we decide to start building liquidity for that, that'll be another cool avenue to send value between chains and receive liquidity at really attractive rates. And then in the future, who knows, there are a lot of other things that you can think you might want to use collateral for that other protocols have had success with. And we may have plans to implement some of those things in the future on top of Prime. So it can really be a one-stop shop.
Fascinating. You know, you've mentioned a couple, and I'm sure hopefully we can have you back on, you know, into the future when the ball is really rolling, to talk to us about some of those. I've got a question for you, sort of in regards to maybe your ideals on how you see DeFi impacting the world. Could you envision a future? Because right now, broadly, DeFi is only used by kind of crypto natives. I say only, there are exceptions, of course. But down the line, could you see a world where, and this is very much how I see it, I think, you know, your everyday individual, instead of going to a bank, or perhaps in countries where they don't actually have access to banking systems like we have in the Western world, could you see Prime Protocol maybe, you know, fitting that market?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the places where DeFi is going to do the most good for people are, you know, people who are unbanked, or you're in a country without a stable currency. And so being able to transact in either crypto or like dollar pegged cryptos, you know, can really protect you and your family financially against any like hyperinflationary regime, or, you know, a regime that has really strict capital controls. So I think there's absolutely an opportunity for this. It'll be really interesting seeing, as, you know, the quote unquote real world and DeFi the lines between those start to get blurred, as, you know, more real world collateral is onboarded into the ecosystem. That's something I'm super excited for. And we're already seeing it with like US treasuries, some tokens that are pegged to like stocks or
Gold.
Gold, exactly, commodities. So I think there's a lot of, and there's also a lot of traditional finance players that are looking at how do we use blockchain rails to better serve our, you know, existing financial markets. Because there's I think a lot that you can get from blockchain, like, you know, faster settlement and finality and, you know, clear consensus and stuff like that, that I think would really benefit the world. So yeah, absolutely. Like, this is a huge opportunity, both in developed countries and developing countries. And I hope that the way that things go is we go towards DeFi rather than just using centralized exchanges to send funds to each other, because I think over the past year, we've really seen that trustless systems are the way to go. And, you know, if you not your keys, it's not your crypto. You need DeFi for the transparency as well, so that, you know, you don't get rugged by opaque centralized entities.
Yeah, yeah. I think that really since sort of 2020, the crypto industry's had a huge light shone on it. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, imagine a bank where you interacted with that bank through connecting your wallet, right? You eliminate any kind of sort of third-party risk, essentially. And it's amazing. And you touched on something there about how real-world assets might eventually become used on DeFi. I think this is something, certainly in the borrowing lending arena, that people haven't or aren't massively exploring right now, but it's a very real reality. I think there will come a day where you can, you'll have your assets digitally and you'll be able to connect your wallet and you'll have currency, even things like housing and property on there that you could borrow and lend against in a fair way where your kind of, credentials are your wallet and you can prove them. It's fascinating.
There are already like houses that are done as NFTs. And once you have a more liquid market for that, you could take the mortgage market on chain. Absolutely.
Would that be something you'd consider? Probably pushing you there on that, but down the line, who knows?
I mean, that's definitely a bit farther out. And the big question there is like, how is the liquidity done? I think for the assets that we're taking on Prime right now, we rely on price oracles in order to make that happen. And I think you would have to set up your borrowing system slightly differently. There's some really cool stuff that has been coming out recently with, NFT lending or like no oracle lending, where you have systems of people basically make bids on the loan. And then if you want to get out of the loan that you've made, then there's an auction to establish a new loan with a new interest rate over a period of time. And I think that is a viable path for NFT lending that works a little bit better than what we have right now, which works extremely well for volatile but liquid assets because you can have instant settlement, instant liquidation. It's like the model that we use is super low risk relative to maybe some of these other models where it's a little bit more dependent on market liquidity.
Yeah, it's a fascinating future. I thought I'd just ask. I know it's a while down the line, but
maybe it's something I'll work on in the future.
Who knows?
Doing the NFT lending stuff is going to be a new protocol or a significant addition to Prime.
Yeah, and I think just touching on that, and this is why I love having people like yourself on the show that are in the industry. I think NFTs are far more than pictures. It's how we've got the internet of information, which we're currently communicating on.
Yeah.
The internet of value is this whole new arena that I think is still to be discovered largely. And you guys are sort of pioneering that industry. Could we maybe talk a little bit about, what maybe attracted you to the likes of Moonbeam and Polkadot? Is there anything that stood out there that made you kind of think, we want to play in this space?
Yeah, so a few things. First, when we sort of set up our protocol and we use pick to chain for master chain, there are a few requirements. It had to be cheap because these costs are costs that every user is going to have to bear regardless of the chain they're on. Fortunately, Moonbeam, very cheap, very affordable. And so we pass along those cost savings to users on every network. Like if we were running all of this logic on ETH mainnet, it would just be completely unaffordable. So by being able to take a lot of the core logic, move it to Moonbeam, saves people a lot of money, regardless of the chain they're using. We needed finality to be decently fast. So we couldn't be waiting 20 minutes for, an optimistic rollup to have the sequencer push to L1 and then have that reach probabilistic finality on L1. So we needed something a bit faster, and Polkadot provides that. And then the other thing that we really liked is because we're multi-chain, by locating the master hub on Moonbeam, that gives use XCM to go to other parachains. Obviously, we've focused right now on the major EVMs because that's where the market opportunity is. And I think it'll benefit Moonbeam a lot to have a lot of that liquidity from the big L2s and L1 and other major EVMs flow in. But in the future, as Polkadot's liquidity base grows and we have more parachains that we want to integrate with, we can benefit from the security of Polkadot's relay chain in order to do messaging and to do that really fast and effectively between parachains. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff that Polkadot enables, and it's very aligned with our vision too. Moonbeam team has also been incredibly supportive, and I think this is the direction that they want to take their chain too, is like we want to be a hub of interchain activity, benefiting from both Polkadot and the EVM compatibility that makes it really easy to integrate every major message passer with the network.
Yeah, Moonbeam and Prime Protocol seem very much aligned in their kind of ideals of the space and where they really want it to go.
Absolutely.
A bit of a different question about interest in the project.
Yeah.
What kind of backers have you, have you had much interest from people wanting to back your project? Have you had, what kind of backers have you guys seen? Is there any in particular that stand out?
Yeah, so we've been relatively conservative with fundraising, but we did do a seed round. We're backed by top investors in the space, including Framework Ventures, Arrington Capital, Jump Crypto, and a bunch of others, people who have been involved with every major crypto protocol and DeFi protocol that you've probably heard of. So yeah, we've got awesome support, and don't think we would have made it this far without an incredible network of people around us as well, making sure that we make it to the next step and have everything that we need to succeed.
Yeah, that's certainly reassuring. I always ask that just because it's very these big companies that are frequent across the crypto space, you can kind of get a bit of a level of confidence, certainly if they're looking to back a project, given some of the successes that they've had with previous projects. That really brings me on. I mean, I think Prime Protocol is an amazing idea. I think you guys are doing something absolutely brilliant that's so needed. I love it when in the blockchain space, there's and forgive me for saying this, there's quite a lot of pointless things in blockchain in regards to, certain areas, but Prime Protocol really is needed. This idea of being able to interact and borrow and lend on any chain from the chain of your choosing in a one-stop shop, I think is just absolutely brilliant in a safe manner. So it really brings me on to, where are we today? What's happening with Prime Protocol? What are the next steps in regards to launch? And also, what kind of chains are you deployed on currently and looking to move on to moving forward? So where's Prime Protocol today?
All right, so day one, chains that are available are Moonbeam, obviously, ETH L1, Arbitrum, and Avalanche. We're going to be rolling out new chains, probably multiple chains every month for the foreseeable future. So it's going to be pretty rapid fire, new chains, and then we're also going to be releasing new assets. Obviously, when we release a new chain, we got to release new assets on that chain, but there will also be some upgrades to add more interest-bearing collateral and a lot of really useful stuff for people to use. Part of our thinking here is we really want to see sort of experimentally where the demand is and how the growth of offerings in the protocol are going to engage people and what people are really going to latch onto. And if we see that there's a certain chain that there's a ton of activity on, we have the capabilities to double down on that chain, add more collateral, and add more support. And then also, if the community is really like, hey, there's this unique strategy that Prime enables between chain A and chain B that isn't supported yet, we can absolutely go and work on supporting that chain and add it pretty easily, because we've got great coverage from our message passers such as Axelar. So yeah, it's going to be pretty rapid fire growth, I think. Early days, if you get in early, I think that'll be pretty awesome to watch it grow. As the app, just the list of things being offered keeps getting bigger, the list of chains keeps getting bigger, and yeah, hopefully the liquidity follows.
Yeah, liquidity is a big thing, certainly in the borrowing and lending game. I'm absolutely stoked to watch Prime Protocol sort of explode, and I think the more and more people hear about it, it's a kind of no-brainer, right? Why would you use a borrowing and lending protocol that's specific to one chain and has maybe a limitation on capital? And it also, like I say, it brings so much to these individual chains collectively and individually in terms of demand. So what are your sort of plans for moving forward from this point today? Have you got anything in the near term that you could maybe share with me and my audience?
Well, up until now, we've been operating on testnet, and I'm not sure when this is airing, but I'm guessing it will be airing right after we have launched on mainnet. So that's pretty much our huge announcement that we've been trying to keep under wraps for a while. And so it's those 4 chains that we mentioned. You'll be able to, on Moonbeam, we've got Glimmer, XC Dot, USDC, XC USDT. You'll be able to do USDC on other chains too, like ETH, Avalanche, Arbitrum, USDT on those other chains, ETH on those other chains as well. Shortly after that, we've got, I guess, exclusive for your audience, we're planning to come out with Bitcoin pretty soon, and DAI pretty soon as well, and AVAX token pretty soon as well. So there's going to be some announcements shortly in the near future that I think people will be excited about, expanding the offerings that we have.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I saw actually on your testnet, I think was it 67,000 users on the testnet, something like that?
Yeah, it's over 67,000 now. It
Wow.
was hard updating the website because we pull that data off the blockchain, and we also look at on our front end how many people have connected their wallet and done something with the app. So it just got so tiring. Like adding that, you're like, okay, we're just going to put the plus number here.
Yeah.
Like every week or so. But yeah, we've had a ton of people use it. We've gotten a ton of feedback, and everything seems to be going really smoothly.
Fantastic. I'm very, very happy to hear it. And I'm really glad you've came on because I think that it's something special that you're doing, and it's something that I'm fully on board with. I think my audience will be, and very much looking forward to mainnet and trialing it, playing around with it. One of the funnest things, I'm sure it was the same for you with DeFi, was just playing around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not even necessarily to make money, just having a little play with what you could do. I mean, it really is interesting. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with you. I think, I've had fun just testing it out, and I'm super excited about the strategies this enables. Being able to use my liquidity on one chain to move it to another for all of these, I think, pretty exciting opportunities. It's going to be a huge opportunity just to have fun, but also to make money too. I think this enables a lot of things that previously you weren't able to do, or you had to pay a big fee in order to be able to do. Whereas Prime, there's no bridging fee. We're not charging 1.5% to move value from one chain to another.
Yeah, it's really cool, everything that's going on. If people want to find out more about Prime Protocol, they want to find out more about yourself, where would you suggest they head to?
So I would suggest Twitter. We post everything relevant to there. The Prime handle is prime_protocol. I also tweet a lot about it as well. My Twitter handle is Colton F. Conley. There's also, head over to our website. We have a Git book. All of those links are linked on Twitter. So I would head there first, and then make sure that you're a Discord member as well, because that's where you can talk to us directly, get support from me and the team, and happy to answer any questions or any issues you run into. We're very available to make sure everybody's happy and enjoying the product.
Yeah, and guys, really don't underestimate the power of being in a Discord, certainly on a project like Prime Protocol, because the amount of alpha that I've got over the years from being in Discords is just insane. It really is. We'll leave a link to where they can find yourself on Twitter, where they can find Prime Protocol. Of course, a link to the Prime website. I am very excited to start playing around with Prime myself when, of course, mainnet is released, which will be when this video is released. So perfect timing. And the last thing really for me to do, Colton, is thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure. And I really do hope that we can do this again. And all the best with Prime Protocol, something I'm excited about.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited to come back. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
Thank you.